This is Power BI and More from CRM Audio with Ulrik Carlson. This episode of Power BI and More is brought to you by Maplytics by Inogic. Maplytics by Inogic is a market-leading certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geoanalytical mapping app. Maplytics empowers users with powerful map visualizations and routing capabilities within Dynamics CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage the right customers at the right time. Maplytics now works with Dynamics 365 version 9 and Dynamics 365 app for mobile and tablet. Inogic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV, delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality programming services. We thank Maplytics by Inogic for sponsoring Power BI and More from CRM Audio. So, Ulrik, are you back for your world tour now?
I am. I'm back in San Francisco.
Great. How is the world?
So, well, the world, in this case, was just going to Australia, which is still a pretty long trip, right? But it was great. I actually love visiting. There's a great Dynamics community, lots of great people in Australia. As you know, everybody who's been to Australia just rave about it. But it was very interesting to see how big the Dynamics community is there and how active people are. I went to 2 Dynamics 365 Saturdays. Both had each over 100 attendees. I went to a UG meeting on one evening that had, I think, 30 to 40 attendees, plus it was simulcast to a UG meeting in another city. So that was interesting. I've never tried that before. So yeah, there was a lot of good feedback too, and mostly interesting to me. I was doing a Power BI boot camp on a Friday night, and by Friday night I mean I think it was like 7 o'clock in the evening till like 8:30, 8:45 in the evening. And still had a pretty good attendance there. So a big thank you to everybody who actually spent their Friday night literally talking to, listening to me talking about Power BI and Dynamics 365.
If you're going to spend your Friday evening doing that, you're really interested in it, I think.
So yes, absolutely. I was actually surprised to see how many people showed up, because when I saw the time slot, I was like, whoa. I'm sure people are going to get home. I have dinners and other things to do. So, but that was great to see. I'm very appreciative of everybody who showed up.
So, what kind of questions did they ask you?
Right. So there was a couple areas that where we got to discuss a lot, and one of the things that people really were digging into was the whole security in Power BI and using the row level security in Power BI. That was definitely something that was on top of everybody's mind. I know we discussed it on one of the previous podcasts. You can always go back and listen to that, but that was definitely something people wanted more information on, because it has been a blocker in some instances where people say, well, we like it, but we don't want to rid ourselves of the Dynamics 365 security when we start sharing those reports. So really digging into what you can do in that area. And then I'm always continually surprised, like everybody just wants to know more about the data export servers, how you use it, pros and cons, why should you not use it, and the cases you probably should use it if it is an option. So we definitely got to look into a lot more into that.
Did you come up with any reasons you shouldn't use it?
Not really, and there was actually a guy, Stefanos, on one of the conference Saturday who had a session exclusively on the data export service, and it was interesting because he actually showed a way on how to set up the data export service from scratch without having to use PowerShell. So he was basically just using the web interface to set it up entirely. And I hadn't seen that one before. So that's even going beyond what the standard instructions from Microsoft are. And you can actually just set it up entirely in the interface. You don't have to set up PowerShell or download PowerShell. You don't have to install all those Azure command lines, etc. You can do it entirely from the web interface. So that actually makes it even easier to get started on using the data export service. So now that's really no excuse to not do it, right?
I think there's 2 reasons why I've heard that maybe have some validity in some cases. One is where you have to know where your data is, and your data in Dynamics is in one data center. I'm not sure. Some people felt like uneasy, like they can't guarantee that the data is going to be in the same geography if it's in Azure SQL. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not.
It could be a different geography, but you specify the geography when you set it up.
Okay. And the other one is people that are trying to use it for things that need to be real time. So instead of doing web services, they want to say they have something that gets an order in Dynamics creates an order number, needs to match the same order number. You need it to be like instantaneous when the order is created. That's something that I've seen people trying to use it and be disappointed because they expect it to be real time, but it's not. But for reporting purposes, I can't think of any valid reasons why you wouldn't use it.
Right. It's gonna be the best you can do is near real time. So right. It's always gonna be a minute or so late. Maybe a little less. They say 98% is updated within 2 minutes. So I think for reporting purposes, that's good enough. But you're right, for operational purposes, you create an order, you need to see something immediately, then yeah, that could definitely be an issue. Another area that I ended up talking a bit about there, which I hadn't really seen coming, was all the old content packs that Microsoft have delivered for Dynamics 365, where you go to Power BI and you basically import a content pack for sales, services, and you get like a nice setup. You guys have talked about it in the past, and the surrounding joke is probably not that useful unless you actually happen to work for Contoso or Northwind Traders or whatever one of those companies are called, right? But Microsoft also lets you download the actual file and work with it. We're actually using some examples because what kept coming up was some questions around, when to use them or not to use them, etc. And there's actually some specific issues with those content packs. And one of them is that they limit you to only 100,000 records. But you can actually go in and override that setting when you have the file, so you can actually open it up. But there's another challenge too, is that specifically on the accounts, they don't use your data. They actually use the fetch XML way of pulling the data. But the way they're doing it is that you're actually limited to a maximum of 5,000 customers. And there's also a criterion there that only pulls the accounts that have had an opportunity in the past 3 years. So kind of like some hidden areas there that you need to be aware of. But one thing in particular is how the option sets are included, because that's one of those data modeling areas that it's kind of boring, but it needs to get done. Otherwise, people won't be able to use your data model. And in those content packs, all the option sets are actually entered manually. Right, so somebody have actually sit there and said, okay, we have an option set with
all
this
the
name.
content packs, like the customer service and sales?
Definitely all the sales, all the ones that I've looked at. I haven't gone through each of them meticulously, but the first couple of batches that came out, somebody had actually sat there and said, like, all right, customer type code option set, all right, value 1. Is this label, value 2 is this label, and type all of it in. So of course, if you have
your own options, it's not going to show up.
Have your own options, you have a different language, you relabel something, then you're going to need to go in and update those manually every time. And I actually haven't looked at those in a while, so it's kind of interesting to see, because people still go download them, look at them, and all right, how do we do this? And that's definitely not a part of the content packs that you should be copying, but look to other methods of doing that. And interestingly, on those, they actually use the fetch XML, which allows you to bring in the labels, right? But on that one in particular, they brought in the data with the fetch XML, but they still entered all the option sets and merged the tables to replace the values instead of just using the fetch to pull the labels directly. So that was kind of interesting. So that was one of those areas where we kind of dug into something that I hadn't expected. But it was kind of interesting to see, and basically Yusuf were talking about, well, how should we do it? And we've talked about those data modeling options before. So one cool note, and this goes back to our standing request to Gus Gonzalez that he needs to buy me a HoloLens, right? Ben Vollmer was there, and he was doing his field service IoT roadshow. It's awesome. If you have a chance to catch it, you should definitely go have a look. And that, of course, includes using Power BI and having IoT devices send information to Power BI and streaming analytics and so on. And he actually brought a HoloLens for everyone to try out. So I actually finally, instead of just watching all the videos and seeing what's there, I actually finally got to try one on and walk around with it. And there's some pictures out on LinkedIn with Ben and I wearing those wearing the HoloLens helmet. Do you want to call it a helmet? It's pretty big.
Yeah. So Gus still hasn't bought you one yet.
No.
You got to use one. Okay.
I know. I got to use one. We're getting closer, right? I think they're like $4,000, $5,000. I want to say, if you want to just buy one. So I can see it is expensive, but it is a very cool experience. So because the way that you get your, in this case, like the Power BI visuals, etc., you can pin them on a wall. So if you're in a room, you can actually open up, use the interface in front of your eyes. To open up specific Power BI visuals, and that could be visuals, of course, that's related to, like, you could look at a QR code in the room that you're in, and you can actually take that visual and pin it to a wall, so it's basically just hangs on the wall like a poster, look around, come back to it, look at the visuals, see the readings, etc. So there are some very, very cool applications where that could be very, very helpful. But of course, it does come at a significant cost. So
but doesn't that work on the less expensive augmented reality devices too?
So I haven't seen it on other items. I believe the Power BI specific application there was created specifically for the HoloLens. But I don't see why it wouldn't work, and I don't see why it couldn't be implemented in, say, the mobile phone, Power BI mobile phone application for like iOS, Android, etc. And you could actually have an augmented reality app there, like you do now with other items. You could actually have a Power BI application there too that uses the augmented reality. I don't see why not. I don't think anyone has created yet. At least I haven't seen it. But maybe that's a good idea. If somebody wants to pick it up, I'll be happy to help out.
Yeah, I think, looking at it, I think that it works with even things like smartphones. If you use the tile QR codes.
Right. But of course, one of the big benefits of having that big HoloLens and that helmet is that you can wear it, you have both your hands free, you can see all these visuals, and of course other people can tap into your video feed at the same time and give you directions on what it is that you need to do while they're looking at all the same statistics.
And everybody can laugh at your dorky pictures on Facebook too.
That too. So I gotta say though, the mask itself, actually, I think it looks kind of cool. It's kind of a little like the RoboCop mask, like very big lens in front of you. But yeah, what looks
RoboChart guy.
What looks weird though is like all the hand gestures and doing things in midair and looking at things in midair that nobody else can see, right?
Right.
So that's always fun to like walk around and doing the in the break room doing lunch, one of those conferences, and pin stuff on people's head and whatnot. All right, so and I have to like pull out a correction too from the last podcast we had.
Oh, really? We made a mistake?
I made a mistake. I was talking about all the tables, entities, about the user settings and duplicate detection rules, etc., that you can pull into Power BI and get some cool analytics about how people are using the system. Do they create additional views and dashboards, personal views and dashboards, and see who actually creates them? And I mentioned too that one of the cool things is you could bring in the duplicate detection rules and actually create a visual so you can see whether or not your rules are published. Because some rules are published, sometimes they're just unpublished because you make
import customizations, it gets unpublished.
Right. And sometimes I think they just unpublish for no apparent reason. At least I have seen cases where I have not been able to figure out why they unpublished, but they did. And I said, well, one of the chances Power BI, of course, is like the lag in the refresh rate. So if somebody unpublished, it could be an hour old before you actually notice it. So when I said that, I said you cannot do that with regular charts because the duplicate detection rule is not a chart-supported entity. However, when I said that right after our podcast, I thought, I think you can do that anyway. And the thing is, the same way that you can actually chart on your security roles is that the user entity, system user entity, is supported for charts. So as long as you start your chart on a supported entity, it's not a problem. So from the user entity, basically link to the duplicate detection rules and basically just break down a chart on the rules by their published status. And then you have a quick overview of all your duplicate detection rules by status. And since it's a user chart, you can basically pin that to your admin dashboard. You open up Dynamics 365 and you have a nice visual on, all your duplicate detection rules, and you can see if all the ones that should be published are in fact published.
Yeah, so that's showing you. Now, can you do anything with the actual logic in the duplicate detection rules?
So you can use the names, you can see some of the data, but it's basically to keep an eye on whether or not they are in fact published. And of course, then you can go open up the rules if you need to make additional changes. But it's kind of interesting to see how you can actually use that user entity, which is more or less connected to everything else in the system, right? And use that as a starting point, so you can basically bring in user settings, any pinned recent items, etc. You can see how people are using those different systems just by going through and creating charts based on the user entity. So there's a lot of opportunity there in what you can bring in as a visual. And of course, since it is I like to call them real charts inside Dynamics 365, all the information is live. So if something is unpublished, you will see it immediately on your admin dashboard. So I think that's primarily what we have on the World Tour. It is continuing though. So the next Dynamics 365 Saturday that I'm going to is going to be in Atlanta on June 8th, or whatever the closest Saturday is to June 8th. I think it's there. But we're going to have a couple of podcasts. Sean Taper from the Field Service Podcast is going to be there too. We're all doing presentations. Of course, Gus Gonzalez from the CRM MVP podcast is going to be there too. So there's going to be a lot of good presentations, and I'm going to present on, of course, Power BI and Dynamics 365. And actually, I'm getting an extra half hour for this session, which I'm very happy with because I was running short for time. And then I'm also doing a session specifically on the data export service.
And I'm not going to be there because I'm taking my kids to summer camp that day. So, right. Even though that's in my backyard, I can't make it. But I know that'll be good, and Sean is excited about that, and should be a bunch of good speakers. Maybe Ben Vollmer will let you put the HoloLens back on.
I hope so.
You can go over to the Elevate Solutions HQ and hang out there.
Right.
Eat some of the break room snacks or whatever Gus has.
Right. Exactly. All right, so moving on to Power BI. There's a couple interesting things that's been happening, and I think one of and this is more for Power BI premium users, customers right now, is that incremental refresh was added. So you don't necessarily have to load your entire data set into Power BI every single time that you refresh it, which, depending on the type of data that you have, could take 2 minutes, 10 minutes, or it could take several hours if you have a lot. So with the incremental refresh, you can say, I just want to import new data from the past day or past 10 days. I only want to import data that's changed in the past 10 days, and you have different settings for doing that. So even though right now that's Power BI Premium only, they did say at the same time that it's going to be coming for Power BI Pro as well. So that might be something that's relevant, and that could probably significantly reduce some of the refresh times within Dynamics 365 environments. Can go anywhere from 10, 20, 30 minutes, etc., depending on how much data that you're pulling in, to only pull in the changed data, and you can bring that refresh rate down significantly. So there was no specific date.
Does it have any risk, though? I mean, what if the sync stops for an hour, or you have an outage for a few hours? Is there a risk that if you say only bring up in data that's changed in the last day, you could hit a sometime where it misses some data? Should you set that window a little bit wider? Right.
So right now it's in preview. So I think some of those answers will come out. We'll get some more answers on those specifically. You can always go back in and do a full refresh. So if you fear that your data may be out of sync, I've seen that there's been a lapse in the refreshes that's been going on. You can come back and basically do a full refresh as needed. I don't know if there's any particular features that would allow you to do a refresh just for, say, the last 15 days or 20 days if you know something has been up, versus sticking with the one refresh, daily refresh.
Okay.
So the other area here, and this is one area we've been talking about too, is CDS for analytics. And finally here, the guy in a cube from the Power BI team sent out a video lifting the covers a little bit on what CDS for analytics is, and specifically how you're using it with Power BI and how you could potentially use it with Dynamics 365. So I've been kind of looking at it and see how, because right now when we're building our data models and working Power BI and we're talking about our architecture, and there's always these things like what's going to happen with CDS for analytics. Is that going to change everything that we're currently doing? Is it going to be difficult to switch over to this new setup? Should we wait or build now and transfer, or what are we going to do? And looking at CDS for analytics, and just to highlight what it is that it's actually its own separate data store where you can load all of your data from the common data model, which of course would include what we've been talking about for CDS for apps, for accounts, contacts, opportunities, lots of those information that's already in the common data store, the common data model. You can load that into the common data service for analytics and bring in all that data as well as other data. And the layer that you're bringing it into in Power BI is called a data pool. And in the data pool, you actually have the same Power Query experience where you're using the M language and the Power Query editor, similar to the desktop. But it's an online interface to bring in all the data from either the common data model or the common data store, your accounts, or connecting it directly to Dynamics 365 or other data sources, which means that you can then have this data pool and modify and model all of your data in there, have access to all your data sources. And the refresh of the data will also happen inside that data pool. So whenever you need to create your reports, visuals, additional KPIs, etc., you actually take your Power BI desktop or Power BI and connect to your data pool as a source and get the information in there. And if somebody has been working with Power BI for a while and say, hey, we can already create a data model in Power BI, upload it, and then we can basically share that data model with somebody else, and they connect to the data model and they have access to it, and they can start creating their own visualizations, etc. There's a significant difference here between the two, and there's a good reason why the data pool is more interesting in this case, because if we look at the traditional way of, or the previous way of doing it, where you connect directly to a Power BI data model, which is what you've been able to do so far, is that you get access to the data model as is. You cannot make any changes to it. You can create additional measures, you can create additional visuals, etc., but you cannot make any changes to the data model. When you connect to the data pool, you actually have that whole connection and Power Query experience where you can pull in the data, you can actually make transformations to it, you can pull in additional data sources and work with it. It gives you a lot more flexibility in creating your report, although with the data pool, you ideally would have a much better starting point. So this is essentially where your consultants during the implementation work create some data pools which have close to finished data models with all of your application data, and you're like 80-90% of the way there, and you can connect to that and then do the rest of the work in the Power BI desktop applications, for example. The connection to the data pool when you connect to it is live, which means that it's live to the data pool, so you're depending on what your sources are and what the refreshes are within the data pool itself. Not too many details on that yet, but I'm suspecting that it's going to be similar to what we have with Power BI currently.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly on this, it sounds like for analytics purposes, that's going to be the preferred way to do it, because as opposed to connecting directly to the CDS for apps, the data model, you'll connect to the CDS for analytics.
Right.
Is there a reason why you wouldn't do that? Is there going to be certain scenarios where just connecting to CDS for apps is going to be better than connecting to the data pool?
Yeah, I mean, because you can obviously still connect to Dynamics 365 or whatever other service directly. The benefit of using the data pool by itself is maybe not so much in the report making, but when you start sharing the data and sharing the data model, so you can have that one basically almost finished model that you share with other users that they can start using that have already been cleaned up. Maybe there's some secure data that have been removed, but you give them that access. Otherwise, they would basically be starting over every time they were going to create a new model. And you can take advantage of all those features. And what Microsoft then going to do that when it's in the data pool and you have all your information in there and you're using the common data model for your accounts, customers, etc., they actually have a lot of pre-made applications that you can add to it and Power BI reports that you can use, including like the natural language schema or the linguistic schema that we've been talking about. That you can use in this context was basically been pre-made when it's been built on the CDS for analytics that you wouldn't have if you build it outside of it. So they're going to come with a number of applications like sales insights and marketing insights and service insights with some of the words I heard that were coming, and I think they've been demoing some of the sales insights applications already, which is essentially built on top of the CDS for analytics.
So you said that on I think the last episode that the sales analytics app is now generally available. Where do people get that?
The sales analytics
right
app or the sales insights. So we have the
sales insights.
Sales insights, yeah. So in Dynamics 365, when you go to the settings area, you now have an area called Embedded Intelligence. And that's the area that used to be called Relationship Insights. And in Relationship Insights, where you had your relationship analytics, you had your auto capture, you had your email. Yeah. What was it called? Email relationship intelligence.
Yeah, the relationship insight stuff.
The relationship insight stuff. That one got renamed to Embedded Intelligence, and the relationship analytics part, which basically looks at all your activities for your opportunities and your customers to see how well that you're doing with each individual customer and to have trending relationships, got renamed to Sales Insights.
But does that require customer insights?
So behind the scenes, it does. But you can set it up, and it'll actually set up its own connection to its own customer insights database.
Do you start paying for customer insights transactions when you do that?
You do. I have not been billed yet, so I don't want to say you don't.
You have a big bill coming.
But I don't see anywhere where they will. Yeah, maybe I just haven't seen it. No, so it actually sets up an additional connection to another customer insights application. And I've actually set this up in an environment where I actually also had my own connection to my own customer insights instance. And what happened was that it actually set up another connection to its own customer insights connection on the back end, loaded the relevant data into that customer insights database, and then basically display all those visuals about the relationship insights and sales insights that you see on the individual forms. Right. So if anybody wants to keep an eye on that, because you can't see it by default, is that if you install the data export service solution from AppSource inside Dynamics 365, that is basically just the visual interface that lets you see all the existing data export services that you have running for that individual instance. So if you have set up an Azure SQL with the data export service, you'll be able to keep an eye on it there. If you add customer insights, your own, you'll be able to monitor the connection and the replication of data to your customer insights database. And if you add sales insights, you'll also be able to view that service that replicates the data to that other customer insights instance that you don't have direct access to, but you can at least see what entities that are being replicated, and you can see how up to date the data is based on the information that you get there.
Okay, it's just a little bit unclear to me since customer insights and CDS for analytics are still not generally available. We've got these products that leverage them, like the sales insights and the and Dynamics 365 for marketing, it's still unclear what's the real platform here.
Right, because there's a lot of stuff here that's being sent in the background, and I believe that was partially on purpose. Is that the idea is that you can use Sales Insight, you can use Dynamics Marketing, and it'll take advantage of customer insights in the background, but the person using it doesn't necessarily need to know or care about at all how you get all those results back, how do you get those visuals back, where they generated. You have access to them, you can use them, and you don't necessarily need to care about what specific database they were sent to in the back end, as long as you get your correct KPIs back. But of course, on the other hand, from a consultant perspective, we want to see what's going on, and we want to say, hey, I want to set up my own, and I want to create my own KPIs, I want to create my own visuals
for
my specific needs, right? Extend it, make more things, and in that case, that's where you need to set up your own customer insights instance and start creating your own panels and so on. But we're going to have that lapse, right? Because the preview is ending, and I believe we're going to have about a month where Customer Insights is obviously not going to be available before it's going to become available here later in the summer.
Nice. So maybe with the upcoming summer conferences, we'll see an announcement there, and it'll be available.
Right. And I was kind of amazed because how long have you been making the joke about Microsoft ending every service in the word Insights?
Yeah, for about 2 years now.
Yeah, and I was watching the CDS for Analytics video, and they double down on it. They have all these sales insights, service insights, marketing insights, applications that you could install on top of the CDS for Analytics to basically get more data, more information, and KPIs out of your existing data.
No, but it's true, because let's see, we had somebody who wanted a demo, and they said, "Can I have an Insights demo?" And the person doing it thought they were asking for a Customer Insights demo, but come to find out they wanted a Relationship Insights demo.
Right.
And or maybe a Insights from Inside View demo. And so it's a little confusing much there.
I know. I think it's safe to say that if somebody asks for an Insights demo, you're definitely going to need to have a conversation about specifically which insights they're looking for.
Right. Give me some insight on what insights you want to know some insight about.
I know. I think we should have like an always up-to-date CRM tip of the day post with your infographic on the various insights.
Which insights do you want? Exactly. Find your insights. Well,
right.
Ulrik, this has been fun. I think we're at the end of our time here, but enjoy the rest of the world tour and the CRM Saturday in Atlanta. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to be there, but I know you'll have a good time there. All
right. Thank you very much.
This has been Power BI and More with Ulrik Carlson and Joel Lindstrom. You can follow Ulrik at his blog, crmchartguy.com, or follow him at Twitter at crmchartguy. This episode is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.